The arson attack in the town of Solingen in 1993 was one of the worst cases of xenophobic violence in post-war Germany, and it triggered a huge response. Tim Kurzbach, you're the city's current mayor. I'd like to talk to you about what happened back then and what it can teach us today. 25 years ago, 4 neo-Nazis, 4 young men, set fire to the house of a family with Turkish roots named Genç. 5 people were killed, 17 injured, some critically. Do you remember that day?
I was born and grew up in Solingen. In 1993, I was 15. As soon as we heard what happened, my parents and I went to the site of the attack the very same day. I shall never forget the image of that old half-timbered house with the roof gone except for the joists. I suspect it's true for many people in Solingen and elsewhere. It affected my thoughts and my feelings deeply. I clearly remember a feeling of total shock and disbelief. It was 4 youngsters, about the same age as some of the victims and me. I went to school here. I was already a student representative. But at that moment, I thought, I really have to get involved and change things.
Ein Moment gewesen, wo ich gedacht habe, du musst dich engagieren. Du musst was verändern.
You were active in a Catholic youth group, and you saw that young men your own age, between 16 and 23, were capable of such a barbaric act. Did you talk about this with your friends?
Natürlich total aufgewühlt.
We were all totally upset. The whole town was. How could something like that happen here? We always thought of Solingen as friendly, colorful and multicultural. How could we not know there was a group like that in Solingen? I don't think the town was or is a bastion of the extreme right. There is no data to support that. Nonetheless, there was a far-right movement. And why didn't we notice?
And why do you think?
I think it has to do with the nature of the public debate at the time. There was a lot of emotion and agitation, like there is again today, under that dreadful slogan, "The boat is full." There had been a debate in Parliament 3 days earlier about changing the law on asylum. Whenever there are such stormy debates, people don't always think clearly. In my Catholic youth group, we held a special event during a service. We had built a house out of papier-mâché and reenacted what had happened. We had someone come in and set it on fire. That caused a huge commotion in the congregation. What we had not realized ahead of time is that the smoke and the soot would hang in the air throughout the service. That's another image I will never forget. Why had we not seen what was brewing, that something was in the air? Why hadn't we faced it earlier? These are powerful images that will always stay with me.
And how did the attack change Solingen? It was always known as the center of the cutlery industry, and then suddenly as a bastion of the extreme right.
I don't agree. It is still more the capital of cutlery.
But at the time.
Then and now, every year around May the 29th, the attack is in everybody's mind here. But the rest of the world still associates Solingen with cutlery. As to the people of Solingen, 2 things will always stick in their mind. First, they still can't believe it really happened. To this day, it remains inconceivable. Second, they still can't get their heads around what happened in the days after the attack. Our town was abused by outsiders, far-right Germans, and also far-right Turks. And they trashed the town center. Many here still look back on those days in 1993 with a sense of anxiety.
The rightists and anarchists and the ultranationalist Turkish Grey Wolves were very active at the time. And they were all lined up against the people of Solingen.
There was a dreadful mood in the country after the other attacks in Hoyerswerda, Rostock and Mölln. And then there was this terrible, unimaginable attack here in Solingen with 5 dead. I think the groups of outsiders who came here wanted to take it out on the Germans. I would say they did not distinguish very clearly who was to blame and who wasn't. Local people started all kinds of projects, charitable foundations, donations, spending nights with immigrant families who felt frightened. The display of solidarity was fantastic and spontaneous. Solingen may have come to stand for something horrible, but one needs to take a closer look and acknowledge the positive things the people here did. Solingen mustn't be seen merely as a symbol for the negative side of German society as a whole.
You said the attack was one reason you became politically active.
Yes, I was standing in front of the house. And then later, when we talked about it, I said, this cannot be. We have to stand up and do something. And as fate would have it, I am now mayor of my hometown, which is not something I had ever expected. I realized back then that democracy and pluralism cannot be taken for granted in a city or state. Democracy is not about saying it is the responsibility of this group or that to make sure things go well, the politicians, the media, or whoever. Each one of us must assume responsibility, every day anew.
What conclusions have you drawn from the events of 1993? What is it that drives xenophobia? I'm sure you thought about that a lot.
Fear and ignorance. A lack of contact and a lack of dialogue. When people don't know anything about each other and don't express clearly what they find troubling in the other. Bogus celebrations of togetherness. We need to be honest, address issues and thrash them out.
An example?
Just recently, the Turkish foreign minister was here on a visit, which triggered a very heated debate. And just to be clear, I have huge issues with the Turkish government and the way it's acting right now, no question. But the answer can never be that we cease to engage in dialogue. Ostracizing the other side and ceasing to listen is not the solution. Now, more than ever, we need to talk to each other. Because if we don't, all these prejudices will just grow. Having no interaction actually feeds the sense of resentment. I believe that the German government needs to take action in response to the increasingly strident rhetoric coming from Ankara. But those who think that the entrance of the far-right AfD party into the German parliament is good because the AfD expresses its criticism clearly are sadly mistaken. The AfD's language of hatred will not make anything better.
Solingen is home to a large immigrant population. A third of the school children have foreign roots. The far-right populist AfD party won almost 10% of the vote here at the last general election. Is xenophobia on the rise in Solingen once again?
It's not a Solingen problem.
But still.
Of course, I wasn't trying to avoid the question. But let's be clear. This is not just a problem for Solingen, it's a problem for the whole of our society. The influx of refugees in 2015 posed a challenge to the whole of Germany. But you know, Solingen never had dozens of refugee shelters. Right from the start, I said to our people, don't let's banish these refugees to certain areas. What we need is hundreds of private apartments. If neighbors can take in new neighbors, you have integration working right from the first day. And it worked. We as a city, we as a country, were not at all prepared for an influx of over 1 million refugees. And without the great response shown by the people of Solingen, we as a city would never have coped. And I think that is the message from Solingen. We are more sensitive than others, and we are more active in integrating the refugees that have come. We still need to face the challenges of our society just like other cities and regions. But I think other cities need to re-engage with this issue. We can't pretend that the battle against the far right is over.
All the perpetrators are now free. Mevlüde Genç lost 2 children, 2 grandchildren, and a niece. But she says there's no hatred in her heart, and she continues to live in Solingen. I asked myself whether I could do that, and decided I couldn't. Could you?
You are absolutely right, and I think it's important to make it clear to our viewers what actually happened here. 2 of the 5 victims were just children. You know, I have 2 sons, and I don't know how I'd react if someone even hurt them slightly. Just the thought that something could happen to my children is so painful. And then you think about this ordinary woman, Mevlüt Genç. And yes, I know some people question why she can't speak German after all these years. But when I stand in front of this woman, I am so humbled and so grateful. No one has the right to accuse her of anything. Just hours after her children, grandchildren, and niece were killed, she somehow found the strength to stand up and call for peace and reconciliation using an impressive language of the heart. She doesn't use intellectual words, but the authentic words of a mother. It goes so deep. And all of us need to be deeply grateful to Mevlüt Genç.
Mr. Kurzbach, we always finish our interviews with 3 sentences I'd like you to complete. For the benefit of social cohesion in Solingen, I would like
for each person every day to realize for themselves that they have a responsibility towards others.
I want my children to grow up in a Germany that
takes it for granted that people have different faiths, come from different countries, love in different ways, and sees that as an enrichment, because we are a rich and great country.
As a practicing Catholic, I draw strength from my faith,
knowing there is always hope of something new. In the darkest hour, you can have hope, because life continues whether here or in eternity.
Tim Kurzbach, thank you.
Thank you.